Hi, 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 and hey, hey, Beatle fans. Welcome to another edition of Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles videocast. This is a bi weekly show in which we talk about the solo careers of the most successful solo careers of all time from any artist coming from a previous band. And so, of course, I'm talking about the Beatles. I'm Ken Michaels. I'm one of the four regular co hosts of the show. Perhaps you know me for a couple of other Beatles shows that I host or co host. One is a syndicated Beatles radio program called Every Little Thing, and the other is another bi weekly show, a podcast show called Things We Said Today. Now, on this show, we do talk extensively on the solo careers of the Beatles, the music, the history. We go in depth on this. Once in a while, we will cover the Beatles as a group, but it's primarily a show on the solo careers of the Fabs. And I'm being joined by my three regulars. First of all, let's bring on the author of a couple of books that you might be familiar with, Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours through the Beatles' lesser known tracks, and also Michael Jackson, FAQ, All That's Left to Know About the King of Pop. Her titles are way too long when it comes to books, but she also writes a lot of articles on the Beatles and soul music and for Beatle Fan magazine as well. Let's bring on Kit O'Toole. She is the queen of Beatles media. Let's all bow to her.
Hey guys, how you doing? Good to see you all.
Hi.
Good to see you, Kit. And this is going to be a great show. I can just feel it.
Absolutely.
Also, we have one of the two co-hosts of the solo Paul McCartney podcast called Two Legs. And that show that's just been picking up, just getting better and better with every week or two that I keep watching the show, along with Andy Nichols, his co-host, and that's Tom Hunyadi. Hi, Tom. I don't see Tom anywhere.
I don't see Tom either. Yes, I think he's coming back on. I think he.
I don't see anyone but Ken right now.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So I think Tom is coming. Tom will probably be back on. I think he got knocked off. So he'll be here in a minute.
Okay. He's reliable. He will be here.
Yeah, he will be here. Don't worry.
And also, we bring on Mean Mr. Mayo. He has had a video program on YouTube for the past 8 years, celebrating his 8-year anniversary, covering not just the Beatles, but pop culture. We know him here as Joe on the program. Hi, Joe.
Sweet.
How are you?
Hello, Ken. Hello, how are you? And good to see you, sort of, Kit in spirit. And my other co-host, Tom, who I see now.
Tom is back.
Yes.
All right,
Technical
Tom,
difficulties. Yes.
That's part of the fun of doing live programming.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
We aim to prove to everybody that this is live. So when we do something like this, that's just to stress the fact that this is live, and anything can happen.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay. Well,
it ain't Memorex.
You're showing your age.
Yeah.
On today's show, our main topic is going to be this album right here. Brainwashed, the posthumous album from George Harrison, came out about a year after George's passing. We'll talk about that album in detail. Okay. Thank you, Joe.
I knew it would pay off buying that. I bought it to save it just for such an occasion.
I got my deluxe copy here.
Very good.
Doesn't look all that good because it's all dark.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no.
Yeah.
I have that copy.
Well,
okay.
He is a dark horse.
Yes, I just brushed up with that before the show.
Yep.
All right. But before we get to our main topic, let's bring on the latest news, as we always do in every single show. We will start with the news of a couple of passings of people in the Beatle world. John Lennon's chauffeur, Les Anthony, who drove his famous psychedelic Rolls Royce, has died. He was hired to be on permanent call for John in the 60s and would drive John to London from his Kenwood estate in Weybridge. Les's son Melvin is quoted as saying, "My father had some funny times. He told me that John Lennon used to answer the door naked. But my father didn't care. At the end of the day, you were employed by them. He said it was because they were hippies and were free living." Les was actually one of two chauffeurs employed by John. The other was Bill Corbett, Les was 6'4", and he was also used as a bodyguard for the Beatles because of his army experience and tall build. Les was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. He was 86. Also, one of Life magazine's famous photographers has died, and that's John Loengard. He shot famous photos of the Beatles, as well as Louis Armstrong, President Kennedy, George O'Keeffe, Judy Garland, and Jane Mansfield. One photo he is most famous for was on the front cover of Life when the Beatles were in Miami. He came up with the quirky idea to have the Beatles pose in a swimming pool as a Fab Four of bobbing heads. Well, the only pool they could find was unheated. And the group was reluctant to do the shot, but their manager, Brian Epstein, urged them to do it because of the importance of Life magazine. So they took a dip in the water, but because it was cold, they were turning blue. So after a minute or two, they were out. John Loengard died at his Manhattan apartment, and he was 85. Now, with all the riots and protests going on right now worldwide due to the murder of George Floyd, Ringo's co-producer for his albums, Bruce Sugar, has reported that Ringo's statuesque peace sign, which he recently gifted to Beverly Hills, has been vandalized. We don't know to what extent, but Bruce says we need some divine intervention soon. We can all agree on that.
Oh, I agree.
The festival known as Abbey Road on the River held a live streaming event for Memorial Day weekend, May 23rd through the 25th. They previously announced they were postponing their event from May until October, but on their website last weekend, they featured live concerts all 3 days on their website and also on their Facebook page. It was 10 hours of tribute bands from all around the world performing. And they are still planning to hopefully stage their festival at the Big Four Station Park in Jeffersonville, Indiana, October 8th through the 11th. That's the same weekend as the Fest for Beatle fans. Let's hope that these festivals can be pulled off. We still don't know. These are big gatherings, but keep our fingers crossed for all of them. Abbey Road on the Island, which was supposed to be the very first festival of its kind like this, on Long Island. It was going to be held on Labor Day weekend. That has been postponed indefinitely. Also, the cassette tape containing 2 versions of the unreleased Paul McCartney Ringo Starr composition, Angel in Disguise, sold last Tuesday at Omega Auctions in Cheshire, England for $9,900, which was less than half its expected price.
Wow.
That is shocking. Don't know why that was. But yeah, very disappointing in sales there for that one. But I do hope we get to hear the song in its entirety, because a little snippet of it was featured online.
From my understanding, it was bought by a bootlegger, so I'm sure we'll be getting some kind of Time Takes Time bootleg with the 2 versions on it. So,
well, if we do hear it, we'll talk about it here on the show. I'm most curious to hear how it sounds. There's a new book out from David Bedford. It's called The Country of Liverpool. It explores country music's influence on the Beatles and what it meant to the Liverpool music scene. Okay?
I am very excited about that book. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say I'm very excited about that book. I've really, David has been one of the really few writers who has gone into the different kind of music scenes in Liverpool, like the R&B scene and so forth. So, I mean, this is going to be good. So I've really been looking forward to this.
Yeah, he's done some fine work, and this kind of angle, this is the kind of stuff you write about all the time.
Exactly.
The countryside of the Beatles. And I do themes like that on my show. So
that's right. So this is right up our alley.
There's a brand new TV commercial airing right now for Facebook using a cover of All Together Now, which is actually sung by Lizzo. Did you know that?
I did not. I just saw that last night. I didn't know that was Lizzo.
The singer Lizzo, one of the hottest singers of today.
I did know that because I listened to the last episode of Things We Said Today.
I missed that part.
I missed that part too.
See, they don't at the end, necessarily.
If you listen to both shows, you get similar news in both, but also there's always something new in each show when it comes to the news.
I gotta listen to Lizzo.
But this particular ad announces the launch of Facebook's Messenger Rooms. Okay. Carlos Santana has just recorded a new version of John Lennon's Imagine with his wife and percussionist Cindy Blackman. The song was recorded to benefit Why Hunger's Rapid Response Fund, helping those in need now more than ever. On SiriusXM's Beatles channel, they premiered the song on their Fab Forum show this past weekend on Wednesday, with Santana talking about this new cover of Imagine. Okay. Another new book is coming out on John in November. It's called Dream Lovers, John and Yoko in New York City. It includes photographs taken by renowned celebrity photojournalist Brian Hamill. Some of them are new and unseen photos of John and Yoko. There are photos from John's only full-length solo gig at Madison Square Garden. Of course, those are the one-to-one benefit shows. Hamill delivers his own insider view of the music icon with intense, intimate photographic portraits and insightful essays. Brand new trailer for the film An Accidental Studio is available online, due out in July on Blu-ray, telling the story of George Harrison's Handmade Studios. And very exciting, the trailer says that the documentary will be on PBS stations soon.
Yes.
So that's something to keep a lookout for. I've been checking online my PBS stations here if they're going to run it. And as soon as I know, I will post something on Facebook, on our page and my page, so you guys know.
Yeah, it's always great when something like that comes out on Blu-ray, because you usually, in the special features department, will get extended interviews or more interviews that got left on the cutting room floor. So that'll be exciting to see what's on the special features for sure.
I think it'll be good.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I have a feeling we're going to be discussing this on our show.
I think so.
I believe it.
Once we get to see it. But I think it'll be very fascinating because, you know, a lot of those films we didn't get to see in America. A lot of them were successful in the UK. So, you know, we'll probably get a lot of scenes from some of those films. It'll be a more comprehensive look at Handmade. Rather than just Shanghai Surprise and Time Bandits.
A lot of good films.
Yeah. Okay. News on Lawrence Juber. He's just recorded a brand new single with Christine Lani. She was voted the Acoustic Guitarist of the Year. And there's a new song called Calling on the Love. It's available as a digital single only. And it's on, if I could read my handwriting, Amazon Music, also Spotify, iTunes, and Apple Music. Lawrence Juber, as you know, has been thrilling us with his private concerts from his own home for well over a month now, every single day. He's cut it down to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but it's the same time, 1:30 Pacific time and 4:30 Eastern time. Check out his Facebook page. He's just superb on guitar. Nothing more you could say.
That's for sure.
He's done an all Beatles show. He's done an all Wings Back to the Egg show. You never know what he's going to play. But yeah, so check out Lawrence Juber's show. And also, we wish a happy 70th birthday to Bob Purvis. He was one half of the band Splinter, the duo that signed to George Harrison's Dark Horse Records. He turned 70 yesterday. And they made 3 albums on Dark Horse. The Place I Love, which is the first album, George Harrison is all over that album.
Okay. Did he just play on it, or did he produce it as well?
He produced it too.
Okay.
He plays on every single song too, and it's got all of George's friends like Gary Wright's on there. You know, top personnel, but kind of like what we say about McGear being the Lost McCartney album of 1974. You could say, because you know the songs sound very much like George songs.
Right.
They really do. Yeah. Happy birthday to Bob Purvis. Okay. That is the latest news. I know you have something you wanted to share with us, Tom.
Yeah, you know, speaking of, well, there's 2 things actually, real quick. Speaking of McGear, we've just been treated to a Spanish television show from 1975, which features Mike McGear on that particular episode, which is now up on YouTube. And if our friend Tom Brennan's here, he can also send you a link to the better quality show, which is on another website. I should have wrote that down, but I did not. So Tom, if you don't mind, if you can send a link. That would be great if you don't mind. He performed 2 songs, lip sync 2 songs, Simply Love You and the and the main song "Leave It," and
Right.
really cool TV show, hour and a half. It's all in Spanish except for obviously Mike McGear's part because that song is in English, and there's a couple other English songs in there as well. But really cool show, really cool to see shows in other countries. So that was a fascinating watch. And
Very good.
also, it looks like we've got an announcement for the announcement that we've all been waiting for since earlier this year. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar now with this news. So at the very bottom of the latest McCartney newsletter, it reads, "See you next month, where we'll be revealing something we've been quietly cooking up. All the best." Now, if you look at the McCartney catalog and you look for food in the title, it's either going to be eggs or it's going to be a flaming pie, which obviously we already know it's going to probably be more likely be flaming pie. But yeah, it's exciting to see that we're probably indeed going to get this when we saw earlier this year that it was going to come out on July 24th. So
Right.
it looks like things are heating up.
We could use some good news right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Start saving those dollars.
Okay.
Yes.
You're gonna need them towards the
Take
end of the
it.
year.
Here you go.
This
Here.
super
Take
deluxe,
it.
super
Take
deluxe
it
set.
all.
Oh, Tom's got ready. I know. I know.
We're all going to
But
be
anyway,
mortgaging our houses.
Yeah. So good news indeed.
Okay. And Kit, there was something you wanted to say?
Yes, indeed. Before I do, Tom Brennan just posted the link.
Thank
And
you, Tom.
and it's rather long, so I'm not going to display it on the screen because it's extremely long. But Tom has it in the comments. So so those of you who are interested, Tom just posted it. So thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. And actually, this announcement has to do with us right here. Next month, we're going to be debuting some new things. We're going to have some changes to the show. We're still going to be doing what I think we do best. We're still going to be having great discussion and everything, but we're going to be changing the format a bit. Ken Womack is going to be back with us for some shows. We are also going to start having some guests because we are going to switch, as I said, to another format. I'm not going to say too much about it yet because we're in the process of it, but we're really excited. It's onward and upward with our show. We're really excited about expanding it, changing some of the, as I said, the format, and so we'll be talking a little more about it as time goes on. But just stay tuned. We'll be giving you more details as time goes on. But look for exciting news coming up for our show.
Yes, indeed. I'm excited.
Yes.
I'm excited just to have Ken back.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So be the Fab Five.
Yeah, that's true.
We're getting the band back together.
That's right.
Love it.
All right. So our main topic on the show tonight is this album right here, Brainwashed from George Harrison. This is an album that came out almost a year after George's passing. The exact release date was November 18th of 2002. Just so you know how well it did on the charts, it peaked at number 18 in the United States on the Billboard album charts, but it did go gold for sales of 500,000 copies. Really, this album deserved to be a number one album as far as I'm concerned. So it's disappointing to me that it only went to number 18. In the UK, it went as far as number 29. The main personnel on this album were George, Danny Harrison, Jeff Lynne, and Jim Keltner. Other musicians included Herbie Flowers, John Lord, Joe Brown, Mark Mann, who I interviewed a couple of years ago. You know him a lot from The Concert for George, the guy who wears the cap and plays guitar.
Right.
And does a lot of the lead guitar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Moran and Jules Holland among the other ones on the album. The songs were recorded over a span of 14 years, 1988 through 2002. And really, it's not really a collection of all new songs because some of them were much older, dating back to Any Road, which you can say goes back to 1988. We could talk more in detail about this, but from my own perspective, I can remember what it was like to wait for Double Fantasy to come out, and the fact that it
Mm,
took 5 years, which was unheard of in those days for a major artist to take that much time for a new album. And in a way, George Harrison did the same thing in between Gon Troppo and Cloud Nine.
right.
It was also 5 years. But little did we know that after Cloud Nine, George would not release, while he was alive, another studio album of all new material. Yes, he did have the two Traveling Wilburys albums. Yes, he had the Best of Dark Horse compilation with 3 new songs. And yes, he toured Japan with Eric Clapton, and there was a live album, but no all new album of studio material from George. Now, the thing that I know about George, which he said several times, is that he loved making music. He loved the creative process of making music, writing it, recording it. He had his own studio. So during this time, he still made music and recorded songs at his leisure. We just never knew if they would ever come out. That's the thing. Um, and Unfortunately, we know that George came down with throat cancer. He
Yeah.
was stabbed in his home the end of 1999, and then the cancer went to his brain, and unfortunately, he died November 29th of 2001. So, what was to come of all these recordings in the meantime?
Right.
Did he really plan on releasing them? But now that he knew that he was dying, perhaps he thought we got to tidy all this up and get these songs finished. So he entrusted Jeff Lynne and Danny Harrison to finish up the songs. He left some instructions on some of the
Yep.
songs on what to do. I've heard some comments from them, especially from Jeff Lynne, that he wanted the songs to sound more like demos, but
Demos. Right.
but Jeff himself thought, well, some of these songs deserve better treatment than that,
Right.
especially something like Rising Sun, which I thought was brilliantly produced.
Mm,
But yeah, so the album came out almost a year after his passing. The concert for George was right at that time, a year after George's passing. And so here's an album that we waited 15 years for, and it was also a year after George died. So, what I'd like to know, first of all, from each of you guys is what was your initial reaction to it? Were you very pleased with it? Was it very bittersweet because you knew this was after George died? Um, and also, we're going to relate that to the fact that these were all songs that spanned these 14 years.
right.
Let's start with you, Tom. What was your initial reaction to Brainwashed?
My initial reaction was, well, leading up to that, I was very excited that we were going to get another George Harrison record. Unfortunately, it was after his passing. I mean, reading Rolling, it was probably Rolling Stone where they talked that he was working on another album. I don't recall remembering if I knew he was working on an album before he died, but I do know
Hmm.
that he had songs ready to go. So, and I knew that they were premiere a new song on the classic rock station when I lived in Michigan, and it ended up being Stuck Inside a Cloud,
Hmm.
which I don't necessarily at that time agree that that might have been the best song to lead off that album with, but just because of its tone and its lyrics. But I still love the track nonetheless. I just don't know if it was the best song to lead the album off. However, I was very excited when I got the album. I think the album still holds up all this time, almost 20 years, 18 years since its release. I
Hmm.
still think it's a wonderful album. I think it's some of his best guitar playing on this album. And I think the Danny and Jeff followed to his instructions. They didn't polish it up too much, which I think was the right move. I think this album sounds really good, and it was a very exciting time. I mean, I'm not that George was gone, but we had this album to look forward to, and we had the concert for George to look forward to,
Hmm.
and I just think that this is. I mean, I read a lot that a lot of people thought that think that this is his best album since All Things Must Pass. I don't know about that, but it is an excellent album, and it should be listened to. It should be talked about more. I don't think it gets talked about enough. I think it gets
Hmm.
a little. Sometimes it gets mixed in the shuffle with some of the other great albums of his, like All Things Was Past and Living in the Material World, and even Cloud Nine. So I think I'm glad that we're taking the time to talk about this album now, and give it some credit, and give it some much deserved credit for sure. So yeah, I mean, very excited when this album came out, and was happy about it for sure.
Okay, how did you feel when you compare the production on this to what Jeff Lynne had done before, say on Cloud
Yeah, I
Nine?
mean,
And
I agreed with George. I mean, when he was whether he was joking around or not, where he wanted it to, sound. I think it was Danny who was talking about how, he had all these demos for these songs, and they should just, call it like a demo album and just release them as is, because they didn't really, listening to Danny and Jeff talk, they really didn't add a lot of stuff to it. Some additional acoustic guitars and some backing vocals, and stuff like that. But the sound of it, it harkens back to almost a little bit to his earlier material, and it's not so much produced as people say about Cloud Nine is. But I dig the sound. I think it plays a little too loud. Meaning, if you have some of the songs on here on your iPod, and something from All Things Must Pass comes on, and then something from this album comes on, you might have to turn it down because it plays loud, the album. So I think they might have produced it a little on the louder side. But other than that, I think the sound of it is great. The production is good, and yeah, I think it's near perfect in my opinion.
okay, Kit, you're next. Your initial thoughts.
I mean, I really had, when you said Bittersweet, Ken, that was the exact reaction I had, and I think it kind of initially colored my opinion of the album, as I found it hard to listen to it at first. Not because it was bad, but because it just, so many of the songs, to me were kind of, it had this cloud kind of hanging over them of his death, and so it was initially very hard for me to listen to. It was kind of emotional, and just every song, to me, it just had this it just was very difficult. But over the years, now that time has passed, now I listen to it in a very different way. I really view it. I mean, of course, you can't help but listen to it, knowing that he knew. It's not all the songs, but some of the songs when he was writing them, he knew that he was sick. But you now listen to it, and to me, it's about a man who was, reflecting on his life and what he had learned. But there's some wit as well. And there are some wonderful lyrics on there too. I mean, it's wonderful to see that he hadn't lost his love of playing with words, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But and his love of satire that goes back to Taxman. I mean, he still loved to do that. And then there's something like Any Road, which is just sort of a philosophical kind of look at life, and then yes, there are other songs too that you can tell it was thinking about spirituality, and does life really end? And I mean, it's so now when I listen to it, and it's as 18 years on, and whatever it is, I now can appreciate it a lot more without that kind of heavy feeling that I initially had, that bittersweet kind of feeling, and appreciate it now for the really philosophical tone of this whole album. And I mean, and I don't mean to be all heavy about it, because there's some great guitar on it. So I mean, I'm not saying trying to get too serious here, but really, I mean, that's what strikes me as I've listened to it over time, that not only is the musicianship wonderful, George really stretches himself as a vocalist on this album quite a bit, but also just there's some really spiritual, deep kind of meaning and this sort of philosophical looking back at his life and imparting his wisdom on us too.
Right.
And so it's really a really wonderful kind of gift, a final statement. And now I listen to it more as, kind of just ways I can listen to it now. And there are certain lines that hit me where I think, wow, I can relate that to my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't anymore think of it as, just thinking of it as, oh God, this reminds me of George Harrison's death. I mean, it now has a larger meaning to me.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
It transcends all that.
exactly.
He throughout his whole solo career was able to mix spirituality, philosophy, and just very personal feelings and blend them all in such a way that was so unique. And you learn so much from him as a person, just
Right.
on his own look at life. And he really shines lyrically, as well as the melodies on this album.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
Joe, how about your initial
Yes.
thoughts?
Well, bittersweet, as Kit said at first, and it seemed that it took such a long time getting here. I've always wondered why George took so long to really get another album out after he had done so well with Cloud Nine and then the Traveling Wilburys. Of course, things happened like he had business problems with his former
Right.
manager,
Dennis
Right.
O'Brien.
Dennis O'Brien, and the Beatles anthology. He was busy on. I mean, he was doing stuff, but I just, wondered why there wasn't an album. And it could be greedy for the fans, I mean, I guess because we want the album. Ultimately, it's the artist that decides when or if they're going to do anything. But you're so used to Paul McCartney, I mean, he's a workaholic and he's always coming out with stuff. So it took a while to get here. And then when it came, I think I was kind of, I don't know, still kind of like bummed out about losing George, even though it had been a year and it was kind of anticlimactic then when it finally came. Uh, and at the time, I don't think I gave it enough of a chance. I mean, I played it, a few times, but it didn't really resonate much. Some good tracks at the time, I thought. And what's interesting to me is personally, now over the years, I've played it more and more and more. And for me, it has rewarded uh, immeasurably. Every time I play it, I like it more and more. And it's funny because still to this day, though, when I'm thinking of George's albums, I almost forget about Brainwashed. It's weird. I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
It's like, what's I think like what's his best albums? People are like, what do you like? Well, I say All Things Must Pass, Living in the Material World, Cloud Nine, maybe 33 and a Third, self-titled album. Oh yeah,
I
and
watched.
Brainwashed.
By the way, I watched your George Harrison ranking video from 2014 last night just to see
Wow.
where you had this.
Yeah, wow, that's 6 years ago. I don't remember where I put it, but
Yeah.
now I probably put it higher now. I'm sure, but now it's in the running for me as one of his best. I mean, I put it right up there with his best albums, but it took time for that. One thing that I always wondered was, wondered or felt bad about. Horse to the Water, the last track that he recorded. I wish there had been some way of putting that on there. You have 12 tracks on the album already. I just felt for it to be maybe handy from a fan's point of view to have his last song on there, if possible.
It would have only
somehow.
been able to go on the CD then because the album's already 48 minutes long.
Yeah, that was another thing. I always thought the album was a little long, although I'm enjoying it. I mean, with the 12 tracks on there, 10 of them going over the album again. I like 10 of quite a bit. Two of them maybe a little more lukewarm on, and there was always something I thought does the album seem to be long? You were mentioning the length of it, and just happened to be reading some reviews. Somebody said, I forget his name, monotony creeps in at the end of the album, and I thought
I read that too. I can't remember who said
I don't know
that.
if I'd call it monotony in my case. Sameness, maybe. Like maybe sameness is kind of it's very samey.
I don't know. George has been accused of being preachy. at times during his career, and to end the album with a song like Brainwashed, telling us all, like from birth, we're all brainwashed in our lives and in this culture, it's a pretty heavy statement to make, about the way we all live in this society. So maybe that brings some people down. I just want to read this comment from Saul Perez. He said, "Were the vocals finished on the album? I know Jeff and Danny had to add sounds to some of the unfinished tracks, but Jordan's vocals seem to sound unchanged." Well, unfortunately, I've never seen anything or heard anything where they went track by track and told you what they did. We just know that in general, George left instructions on some of the songs. So some of them were probably finished before George died.
Yeah, the interview that I saw earlier today, Danny and Jeff Lynne talk about how these tracks, the vocals were finished, and so all they did was add on to what George requested them to do.
Do you think that? Oh, go ahead.
So, I mean, he had like 3 or 4 takes of each song finished vocally wise. And then, with him playing bass as well. So there's some of that. So if there was like a little bit of, this vocal didn't sound good, they had 3 or 4 other takes that they could, scissor in, if you will, cut and paste in,
They could mix and match whatever sounded best.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, I just thought about this. Do you think that maybe to some people this album might come across as being, instead of being a very focused album where all the songs are going to be on this album, are they like leftover tracks through the years as a compilation with some new songs? And maybe some people think less of it for that reason.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, learning more about the album, you learn that, like you said early in the show, Ken, I mean, this was 14 years in the making. So, yeah, maybe they do feel like that, or maybe just because of the fact that it was basically, they're Jeff and Danny are just finishing these songs from demos for the most part. So George didn't really have any opportunity to go in and maybe polish up these songs, or maybe give a better vocal or a better guitar solo or whatnot. So that's possible.
Yeah, and I think that. Oh no, I was going to say that may have been also another aspect of my initial reaction to the album, that it wasn't, a true finished album. I mean, that in terms of, I know Jeff and Danny did, but I mean, it was, George really didn't finish it, and that, were these really the way that he intended them to be? And I know that he did leave instructions for a number of the tracks. So, and of course, I know, Jeff is a longtime collaborator, good friend. Danny is, of course, Danny. But I think that initially was another issue, I had with it. But I've mellowed out over time about it.
I was wondering also about the title, using Brainwash, if George wanted it to be called Brainwash, because in a couple of interviews he had thrown out titles.
Portrait of a Legend.
Portrait of a Legend. Your Planet is Doomed, Volume 1. He also said, I think when he was doing All Things Must Pass, the reissue of that, that's a sense of humor. But I wonder, did they just pick the title themselves, or I wonder if he said, no, I'd like it to be called that. Instructions.
The only way we'd know is if we asked Olivia or Danny.
And that's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
If they remember,
Right.
And the cover artwork too. The cover artwork is also
superb.
Very interesting.
Yeah. It's like robots around a television.
Says it all right there.
Yeah.
I know Danny Harrison said, and I really agree with him on this, that even though the music spans 14 years, there's a real consistent sound through it. And Ringo said that to Danny himself. So it's not like one song is from 1988 and another song is from 2001.
Right.
You wouldn't really know. And I think that benefits the whole album.
Yeah, and I think the guitar solos too, or the guitar playing from George, sound the same as well. They had almost the same tone in them while listening to these songs. Kind of Marwa Blues sounds a lot like Stuck Inside a Cloud's guitar playing. It's just, has the same feel.
Well, let's just run through. I just want to mention some of the songs that were older songs, and we know that they were older because Any Road was written in 1988 and it was written during the video shoot for This Is Love. It actually was something that was on a sign near a koi pond in Hawaii that said, "If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there." And so we do know that's from 1988. Run So Far, we know, is an older song because George gave that to Eric Clapton, and his version appeared on his Journeyman album. And in fact, George played on it. That album came out in 1989. Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, of course, is an older song from 1930, a Harold Arlen song. But George performed that on Jules Holland's TV show in the early 90s. This version, I believe, is slightly different from what was on the TV show, but I'm not quite sure to what degree. Also, Stuck Inside a Cloud, there is a radio special that was broadcast when Brainwashed came out, and it's a fantastic special. And Olivia, Danny, Jeff Lynne, Jim Keltner, they're all interviewed in this radio special. And Jim Keltner said that he recalled hearing Stuck Inside a Cloud in the 80s. But, you know, sometimes I wonder, as you had said, Kit, there are times here when you listen to the lyrics and it sounds like George is aware that his time is almost up.
Yeah.
So when you hear some of the lyrics towards the end of Stuck Inside a Cloud, never been so crazy, but I never felt so sure. I wish I had the answer to give. Don't even have the cure. Just talking to myself, crying as we part, knowing as you leave me, I also lose my heart. I don't know if those are part of the original lyrics. If he started writing them in the 80s, maybe he adjusted them towards the end of his life.
Right.
You know, those are, you know, such powerful lyrics. Looking for My Life has lyrics that are similar to that, makes you think that he's aware of his, you know, the fatality in life. So, yeah. And also, I wanted to bring up this song called Rocking Chair in Hawaii because this song has a bit of history to it. Because when George was recording All Things Must Pass, he rehearsed this song. And I'm actually gonna, if my CD player works, I'm gonna try and play this for you off my computer speaker, and hopefully you'll be able to hear what it sounded like during All Things Must Pass. Here.
Way down to the river, I can be a rocking chair. I went down to the river, I can be a rocking chair.
So you can see the similarity there in what George did. But if you go back to the legendary Hank Williams, he recorded a song in 1950, which is called Long Gone Lonesome Blues. And let's see if I can play a little bit of that.
Don't hear anything.
Don't hear it.
Yeah, sorry, Ken. Nope.
Well, not hearing it.
You don't hear it?
No.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't hear anything.
I thought you could hear it off my computer speaker. But it's very similar to what George did right there from the All Things Must Pass sessions. So I thought you guys would want to hear that.
Yeah,
so it was influenced by Hank Williams.
Okay.
As I said, that was a hit for him in 1950, Long Gone Lonesome Blues. You can check it out online, and very much like that song, changed the lyrics around.
Cool.
All right. So talk about what songs are favorites of yours from this album. And we haven't talked about many of the songs, but I want to get your impression of Marwa Blues because what a stunning instrumental that is, and
beautiful.
tremendous guitar work from George. And it actually won an
a
award.
Grammy too.
Won a Grammy. Yeah.
Best instrumental. What was the actual name? Yeah. 2004
Best pop
Grammy.
instrumental performance.
Yep. Right. Also, Any Road was nominated for Best Male Pop Performance.
Yeah.
But Marwa Blues is stunning to me.
It
The
is.
guitar work on there.
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a standout track, and it's one that I fell in love with when I first heard the album. Unlike Kit, I didn't have that same feeling that she had while listening to the album for the first time. But because I was just because I was so excited that we finally got a new George Harrison record. I think the album starts off wonderfully with Any Road and PT Vacation Blues. I think that's just a great 1-2 punch to start off the album. Rising Sun and Marwa Blues, I think, are great. Stuck Inside a Cloud, I always thought it was a great song. Like I said earlier, I just don't know if it was the best song to be the first song that you hear from the album. Maybe because, like Kit said, I mean, it's very reflective, but great lyrically. And then I think the album ends great with Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, Rocking Chair in Hawaii, and, and Brainwashed to an extent, too. There's a really cool part at the 2-minute mark of the song where this woman, Isabel, I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name because I know. No, but reading from the, How to Know God, I thought that was beautiful, and I think I love the tabla playing throughout that song as well. But yeah, the guitar playing throughout all of this album is wonderful, and Marwa Blues is just, I think, I think his last stamp on his career. I mean, just because he's looked at to me like an underrated guitar player throughout his career. Even though he is known, but this, I think, just proves that he was a master guitar player and just was the slide guitar. Even though maybe he might have used it too much throughout his solo career, it was just beautiful, and it's I wish I could say more about it, but it's just such a delight to listen to. It really is.
It's always important to know if you have a stamp on a certain sound. And George Harrison's slide guitar work when you hear it.
Right.
It's kind of like Eric Clapton when you hear him, that kind of thing. So, but Marwa Blues to me is like a yearning. It's like a reaching for the heavens. It has that kind of feel to it. I know Olivia Harrison especially loved that particular song. It might have been her favorite. Kit, just talk a little bit about
one more thing. But the thing that I find fascinating too that I didn't realize from listening to Danny talk was that 7 was his favorite number, and then usually the 7 the 7th track was usually his favorite song on the album. So I went back and looked at a lot of the the albums to see what the 7th song was, and some great tracks. But go ahead, Kit. Sorry.
No, and actually, Tom Brennan just said the same thing you did in the comments. So, you guys are telepathic. You just said the same time. Marwa Blues is a beautiful instrumental, and in fact, I think Paul McCartney also said that was one of his all-time favorite George tracks.
Right.
And definitely, beautiful, very almost meditative. Sort of track, and definitely one of the highlights, no question. Also, not only is he, as Tom, you just said, an underrated guitarist, but I thought lyrically he had some incredible moments on this album, such as on Pisces Fish, which I thought was a very Dylan-esque
exactly
song. Yeah. All right, Ken, you're with me. Very, very Dylan-esque, but I love the lines toward the end that sometimes my life feels like fiction. Some of the days it's really quite serene. I'm a living proof of all life's contradictions. One half's going where the other half's just been. I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, that I think he's looking back on his life, and of course he's had he certainly had a more shall we say, adventurous life than most of us have had.
Yeah.
And I just, I just love that. And again, it's what I was talking about earlier about how he's such an I mean, other albums he's done have been contemplative as well, of course, but this one, I don't know, this one I think was on another level, and also Looking for My Life, which that may be my favorite.
Really?
Because
Okay.
it's so poignant. I wonder if, I don't know if he wrote it after he was attacked. I'm not sure, because it certainly can be read that way. I mean, I never knew that things exploded. I only found out when I was down upon my knees looking for my life. I had no idea that I was heading toward a state of emergency. I had no fear where I was treading. I only found it when I was down upon my knees looking for my life. I mean, talking about reevaluating your life, kind of life flashing before your eyes. And I don't think you have to be in a situation like that to relate to it. I think we all have moments where we're reevaluating our lives, where we have a moment where, that kind of crossroads, sort of moment where we're looking for meaning. Just wonderful. I mean, that song really, really struck me. Rising Sun is another one. I think, Tom, I think you mentioned it earlier. Another great one. I will say, I thought that was the one song on there that was a little overproduced for me. A little too ELO-ish with the strings. A little too. I love Jeff Lynne, but this was a little too Jeff Lynne for me. It was just a little with the strings, everything that was a little overdone, but it's still just another great example of his wordplay. I love the line, but in the rising sun, you can feel your life begin. Universe at play inside your DNA, and you're a billion years old today. That's wonderful. I mean, that's a wonderful image there. I just, you can just feel it. Stuck Inside a Cloud, you mentioned earlier how great that is. And you could read it a lot of different ways. I mean, Ken, you were reading it, and I did too, initially, that about death. I mean, and you could, but I think Danny said in an interview, he, mentioned you could also read it about isolation. And you could read it, definitely. I mean, there are different ways, you could interpret. And I think George was a master at that. So I would say those were the highlights for me. And, George was just such a master at writing songs that you could interpret for yourself. I mean, the songs we've talked about in the show, the songs that love songs, they could be romantic love or spiritual love, however you want to interpret them. And this was kind of another case of that he wrote songs that, they could be about death. They could be about, meaning of life. They could be about isolation. They could be about, however they pertain to you. And on those songs particularly, he was just as on his game.
Yeah, definitely on this album. Yeah,
exactly. Sure. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with lyrics. I'm usually drawn to melodies first, and I still am very much that way. But when you really take the time to read the lyrics of what George is writing here and throughout his whole career, but he just seems so self-assured about everything he was writing about, very confident, being very aware of how he felt about everything. Even like P2 Vatican Blues, which to me is like about the hypocrisy of the church and all the things they do at night, and it made me think of the line in "Awaiting on You All," while the Pope owns 51% of General Motors, and the stock exchange is the only thing he's qualified to quote us. That kind of thing. Sometimes he says things that are against the church, and this is more of a continuation of that. Joe, some favorites of yours?
Well, favorites of mine. My favorite song on the album is the opening track, "Any Road."
Great
I think
song.
it's my very, very favorite song on the album. I love how George starts it by saying, "Give me plenty of that guitar," going into that. And that's, to me, that should have been the lead-off single. We all have different tastes. I see somebody
I agree.
thought that "Looking for My Life" could have been or should have been. Everybody has their picks, and I just love the humor. I think it's George's like crazy humor in the P2 Vatican Blues. I think that's shines through in there. I'm not going to be able to be as elaborate with the lyrics as Kit has been following Kit. Maybe the next time I'll write them down more. And
I'm an
Pisces
English
Fish.
speaker. What can I say?
Okay. Yeah, Pisces Fish, love that one. Looking for My Life, Rising Sun. I mean, they just one after the other. And Richard K, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He was in
Hotwika?
Hotwika.
Okay.
He said, considering how these songs, were recorded different times, it's amazingly cohesive. And I feel the same way. I mean, I wouldn't have known, really. It took me a while when I read up on it later and found out, oh, well, this is what happened. This was the situation. These were when they were recorded. This is when the demos were done or whatnot and written. You could have fooled me. I think anybody listening who doesn't know the history would think it was just recorded as a regular album. I want to say one thing about Stuck Inside a Cloud, which I also love. I hear that still pretty regularly in my supermarket.
Oh,
over the speakers. I don't know why, but I'm glad I do. Maybe it's George speaking from beyond or something. Of course, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea is a lot of fun. Those are my favorite tracks, I would say. I'm not that. I said earlier, a couple maybe leave me a little lukewarm, and for me, it's Never Get Over You.
Yeah.
That's my probably. Well, I'm not that wild to that one.
I'm with you on
I'm
that.
saying.
Oh, I'm exactly the opposite. I love Never Get Over You.
And Rockin' Chair in Hawaii. Although now that you're putting two and two together with the Beatles sessions, it's a lot more interesting to me than I thought before. Seeing how we had that in the back pocket for so long. But that's it. Overall, as I said when I first was talking about the album, now I really, really enjoy the album. I'm trying not to have it so overlooked in the back of my mind. I don't know, maybe because it came out late and everything, and George passed away, and I got to bring it more to the fore when I'm thinking of his albums altogether, because definitely for me, one of his better albums.
Oh, I agree with you totally.
Did any of you guys, while first time listening to the album or the first time listening to Any Road, realize that we had seen it a few years earlier on Craig
John
Ferguson?
Fugelsang.
Yes.
Or John Ferguson. Yeah, that's what I meant. John Ferguson.
Yeah.
I never had to say his name. He performed a version of it on that. That was 97, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
it was,
97.
97.
Yeah.
To promote Ravi Shankar's album.
Shankar's,
He was
right.
on. Chants
that's such a wonderful little because it's really for Ravi Shankar, but George plays a little bit, and he's kind of like seems a little shy about it, and John keeps trying to coax him into playing something to his credit. And he does a little bit of doesn't he? He does a Wilbury. You Belong to Me, I think he does. Is it?
He does All Things Must Pass, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
He does All Things Must Pass. And he does sing a little bit of I think it was a Wilbury song. Isn't that one you
belong to me?
Belong to Me.
No. If you belong to me.
If you belong to me.
I don't remember him doing that one.
I don't either.
Oh yeah, he does. He starts. In fact, he starts singing. I don't know if you know this when George starts singing it, and then Fugelsang just comes in someone else's clothes and then sings the lyrics. Smelling
I
like
don't
the
remember
rug,
that.
like that.
Well,
oh yeah, I remember that.
Wow. But Any Road, I definitely remember
Right.
that because I remember thinking, wow, that's a great song. I hope he,
I was thinking, wow, it's good that he knew it. You can impress George. He's singing this, and he knew it. The interviewer.
Right.
How cool is it that he went and did a song that he hadn't released yet, that nobody knew?
Yeah.
And he sounded like he hadn't played it for a while, so he had to try and remember the words, and
Right.
it
Wasn't
comes
it?
across that way.
I think it was Ravi's wife that suggested that he play that song.
Yep. Yeah, it was. I don't think she knew the name of it. She
right.
kind
No,
of
she didn't.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a nice surprise there.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
But about Never Get Over You, George has that gift for delivering great love songs on so many of his albums, but I love that one. There's a great line. It's a favorite of my wife's. You warm the coldest feet, can cool me in the heat, and also your eyes pierce through my heart. Your smile tears me apart, and of course, great slide guitar work throughout that song.
Yeah.
But the lyrics really impressed me so much, and the one that you pointed out, Kit, from Pisces Fish,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the greatest lines of any of his songs,
Yep.
about himself. One hat's going where the other hat's just been, all this stuff that's very heavy to think about. I don't know how he's able to explain how he feels about so many things in life, so
Right.
many thoughts put together all in one song, and in a way that makes sense, you know, only through George's brain, only
Yes.
as he can explain it.
That's
And
right.
throughout his entire life, he talk about, the goal in this life is just, at some point we're going to die and our soul lives. So we try to transfer to a higher life,
Hmm.
from this one. So he wasn't afraid of dying. He's
Mm.
very spiritual. That was his goal. And what he has tried to say in life is that just about everything else that we go through is all BS in this
Yes.
world. This is the most important thing, is to try to achieve this in life. That doesn't mean that when he's talking about looking for my life, that he wasn't surprised that this could happen to him at the end,
Hmm.
having cancer, for example,
Mhm.
or even being
Yeah.
stabbed. I do wish that we knew exactly when each song was written.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
know the order when it was written. We just know what some of the earliest ones were. And Run So Far, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but this was in that radio special. That song started because John Cleese had a travelogue show that he hosted. And at the end of it, he would always say, you got to run so far. You have to take your problems with you. You can only run so far. And so George thought that was very funny. And that was like the seed of what planted that song.
Mm.
So just using that line from something John Cleese said.
Interesting.
So, you know, where he gets these
So
ideas.
yeah. So I completely forgot about the 8 days a week book. I mean, did you look at that to see if there was exact recording dates in that book for this?
um, I
Because I
didn't look.
completely forgot. Yeah.
I don't think I did.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been in there because
Okay.
it was released in 2002.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm thinking 97
Although,
for some
you know
reason.
what you will
Yeah.
have? You will
Yeah.
have yes, Eight Arms to Hold You is the book, but you will
Yeah.
have like Any Road, the appearance on
Right.
VH1 in there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. But I really am so impressed with this album. I think it gets stronger through time.
Mm.
Because,
Yeah.
Yeah.
George, through all these different songs, though it spanned 14 years, he says so much in the lyrics. And I do love the melodies and I do love the arrangements. His guitar work is great. There's the use of the ukulele on this album, which he
Hmm.
uses actually on 4 songs. So it really has a lot of an acoustic feel to it.
Yeah, it does.
And I love that aspect of it. But you learn so much about George's head, where it was at, what was important to him in life. And I do recommend, if anyone could ever get a hold of that radio special, you know, Danny speaks so well, so eloquently, about how George was, and that, the important things in life is to have gardening and have trees and to breathe clean air, and not to waste time on your cell phones and being caught up in, the busy day-to-day life that we all are a part of. And I think once you get that feeling through, certainly what Danny says, it transpires into this music. And you listen to the lyrics of what George is saying, and it's so powerful. I really think that this is a great album. you know
And I thought
uh,
it was beautiful that it ended, that after the song Brainwashed, that then it ended with that, with the Indian,
The
hmm.
chanting.
the chant. I thought
Yeah.
that was such just a beautiful way to end, and
It was nice.
appropriate way
Hmm.
to end it.
Hmm.
And I also just when just mentioned Danny, I've just got just interject and just say that I just think Danny has done such a wonderful job of really protecting George's memory, and
Yes.
and really in projects like this, he really knows, I think, what his father wants, and really respects it. And this is another great example of that. He doesn't I don't think he overdid anything. I think, and I mean Jeff Lynne too, of course, but I think Danny has. I mean, he gets, I think, what his father would have wanted, the sound, everything, and he doesn't want to intrude on it. And so I think he does just a marvelous job.
Cool.
Plus, also a benefit with Danny is that even though these songs were unreleased all those years, Danny grew up with them.
Right.
These songs weren't strangers to him.
Yep.
You know, he really had a feel for what his father would have wanted. And I could only imagine how tough it must have been to work on this right after George died. So it must have been really painful for him, but it also was a labor of love. And I think that really comes through.
Right.
And I think what Danny did and Jeff Lynne did was a superb job. You know, I wouldn't say Rising Sun is overproduced, but then, you know, that's me. I love Jeff Lynne. I love his production, but, you know.
He does apologize in one of the interviews that I watched about because, you know, George says he didn't want it posh, you know, as
Yeah.
you know, polished, you know, and he says, well, sorry, George, you know, one of the songs had to be, you know, so it was probably that song.
That
you know,
one,
that he was
yeah,
have to
that
talking-
was
be,
that
right.
was the only
talking
one.
about.
That was the only one. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that's a little too ELO. But other than
Right.
that,
Okay, this has been great. Why don't we go around and tell our listeners what we're up to with all of our projects and shows?
Yeah.
We'll start with you, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Well, today, Two Legs, we posted our new episode, which features our good friend here, Ken Michaels. And what we did was we talked about songs that are not on Paul McCartney records. These are songs that are on other people's records, compilations, soundtracks, songs that he provided vocals for and/or instrumentation, or just gave the song to another artist. And these are songs from 2000 to 2019. They could be songs like Best Love, I'm Partial to Your Abracadabra, Heal the Pain, stuff like that. So go over to our YouTube channel, Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, and you can check that episode out there, or you can listen to it on Podbean and iTunes. You can reach us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com, and we've got more great shows coming up in the future, and look forward to hearing from all of you. So check it out.
Yeah, that was an amazing show in a way, and it's something that I have always been fascinated with. Ever
Right.
since I bought the book altogether now, the discography that I bring up every now and then, because they happen to have sections where you've got songs the Beatles wrote for other people,
Right.
produced for,
Yeah.
played on, that kind of
Right.
thing. A guy named Chris Engelhart put out a couple of books just on that kind of thing, side projects. And so there may be some songs that you never heard of before, like the
Exactly.
ones you mentioned of. I don't know how many people watching this show are aware that there is a song that you just mentioned there called Best Love. It's actually on a Steve Martin album with his bluegrass band, and Paul sings the song. And Steve Martin wrote it. You know, it's really cool to listen to. You know,
Yeah,
stuff
there it
like
is.
that.
Rare Bird Alert. It's called.
Right.
Great album.
good song.
Good
Great
song
album.
too.
Yeah, good song. Yeah. So
Yeah.
check that out, and thanks for coming on, Ken. Appreciate it.
It was a guess.
Yeah.
Joe, how about you?
I have my YouTube channel as always, Mean Mr. Mayo, Beatles and more, solo Beatles. And finally, I'm making arrangements. I'm not going to try to say this gentleman's name. You know who I'm talking about. To go on Fans on the Run. Maybe I'm going to record a show.
Here we
But
go.
that'll
I'm gonna attempt it
Ethan
real quick.
Alexandrian.
Ethan Alexanian.
Alexandrian.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm so hopefully I'm going to get some recording done. That'll be in late June, but still, it's something different to talk about.
Right. No. Good stuff.
So that's me. Go over there and subscribe. Mean Mr. Mayo. Get me up to 10,000.
Okay, Kit, and you?
And well, before I talk about my my own things, I just want to mention on me, Mr. Mayo's channel, that he did a great video that I'm almost tempted to do a video myself, my own version of memories. Going to the record store as a kid, and he kind of takes you on a tour back in his old neighborhood, and talks about what he was listening to on the radio. I loved it. I thought that was
thanks. That was a lot of fun. I just woke up on a Sunday morning, and I get up early. It was 6:30 in the morning, and I said I was going to make a video, and I said, you know what? It's a beautiful, gorgeous morning. Not many people are going to be out. It's about a half-hour drive to where I grew up or so. So, half hour or so. So I said, let me do it. Got in the car, and I recorded the whole thing. I went past old spots, and I even drove over the spot where every time I hear silly love songs or Let 'Em In, that's what I always think of from 1976, the view that I had when I used to go to the beach.
Yeah, and
So
so
I just
yeah,
spontaneously did it, and I had a great time with it.
drove to Rockaway Beach. I mean, I could hear the soundtrack in my head as you were
Rock, rock,
driving. It was
rock,
really fun. So
Rockaway Beach.
I made
Yeah.
you a similar one myself. It was really fun. So
Oh, great,
go
great.
check that out. That was very inspiring. So, anyway, well, as for me,
Nope, time's
I
up, Kit. Sorry.
oh no, shut up. Anyway,
We got to allow the last 15 minutes for Ken, so hurry up.
that's right. Oh,
He's got the
It's
most
only going to
credentials.
be it's only going to be 2 minutes with me.
all right, all
The
right.
most.
So anyway, I'm on a good friend of our show, who in fact they left a comment earlier. So our friend Ed Chen. I'm on When They Was Fab with Ed Chen and Lonnie Pena. We are doing a two-part show where we talk about the Beatles anthology, and specifically the very first episode. We have a lot of fun. We went back to what it was like watching that first night, the countdown to Free as a Bird, what it was like watching that first episode, and how it, looking at it now, was it really the definitive story? We had a really great time talking about it. So part one is up. I will put that on our Facebook page, and it's on my own. So do go check that out. And my columns will be back soon. I just finished I'm finishing a big project. Ken Womack and I are editing a book together, which hopefully will be out either at the end of this year or beginning of next. You believe me, you will hear more about it on this show. So finally finished editing the manuscript, so I can get back to my own columns. So that will be
Cool.
coming soon. So
Awesome.
so that's what I'm up to.
So you were suggesting that the anthology might not be accurate there, Kit?
Maybe, maybe not. You're just going to have to listen into the show.
All right, will do.
Yep.
But the Beatles version of their own story will always be valuable, no
Yep.
matter what,
Oh,
how they tell it.
Yep.
All right. As for me, I'm going to be on several shows. Like we just mentioned, Tom's show, Two Legs. That's already out, by the way. You could watch it on YouTube. And like Tom said, we talk about Paul McCartney's side projects from 2000 and on. There's plenty of them. There's over 40
yes.
of them. We don't talk about all of them, but we
Yeah.
do cover quite a lot that you may not even be aware
Right.
he was involved in. So that's really
And just to add, plug your show. I mean, a lot of those songs that I learned about from listening to your radio show. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Paul McCartney teaming up with Lulu,
Yeah.
the singer, for an
Yeah.
inside thing. That's, very interesting recording right there. You mentioned Ethan Alexanian. I just did a show with him. That's going to be airing sometime this month. Fans on the Run is the name of the show. It's all about our history with the Beatles, how we became Beatle fans, and also I talk about my history doing all the different Beatles shows that I've done. He has a habit of saying, "What's your favorite, least favorite of everything?" So you find out all that in the show. It's a good, fun show. Sam Wiles over in the UK does a Paul McCartney solo Paul McCartney podcast called All or Nothing. I did a show. It's actually a two-parter. He's in the first part. I'm in the second part. All about flowers in the dirt. That'll be airing pretty soon. And I'll also be taping a show with Bob Wilson and Warren Brown for Tomorrow Never Knows. And that'll be this week. So that's going to be a mixture of my history doing Beatles shows and throwing out a lot of trivia back and forth.
Cool. Nice.
So I'm on a lot of different shows there. Don't forget my website, kenmichaelsradio.com. There's Beatles trivia every single week. You can win one of 9 amazing prizes every single week there. And there'll be a new trivia or game posted tonight before I go to sleep. I promise. It will be there. And things we said today, we just did a show where Darren DeVivo and Alan Kozin and I all listed our 5 least favorite Beatles songs. We've already gotten a little bit of a backlash for that, which I kind of expected.
I like shows like that.
Yeah.
Darren's picks were actually kind of shocking.
I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah, I'm not going to reveal one of them. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, a lot of guts for Darren to say what he said.
Right.
And that's just about it. I think. So if people want to get in touch with us, Kit.
Yep, they can email us at talkmoresolotalk@gmail.com. Love your George Harrison pin there, Joe. That's cool. They can also, you can follow us on Twitter at TalkMoreTalk1. You, of course, can reach us on our Facebook page, and you can also follow us on YouTube, and please subscribe while you're there. And also, you can find us on virtually any podcasting platform you can think of. Subscribe to us there. Spread the word. The more people know about us, the better. And thanks, as always, for your support. Thanks for all the comments tonight. We couldn't get to them all on the air, but you better believe we will read them afterwards and respond to your comments. We read them all.
All right.
Good.
Yes.
Awesome.
This has been a fantastic show. I enjoyed talking about
Yes.
Brainwashed with you guys, and thanks to all of you for watching the show tonight. Tell as many of your friends about this show as possible. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you can, and we so greatly appreciate your being here and being part of this show. You
Absolutely.
know, means everything to us.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So on behalf of Kit and Joe and Tom, remember, you can only run so far. And we will see you all next time.
I'm going to be looking for
Take
my
care.
life. See ya.